double check the motherfucking YouTube. Wherever she is. All right. We live, nigga. All right, so boom. Um, yeah, so to answer your question that I grew up in Long Island in Nassau County, right? So I was born in Rockville Center, which is basically like pretty much a white town in Long Island, Nassau County, pretty upscale, affluent, I dare say. At least that's what the internet say. But my black ass only been to the hood project part of Rockville Center, which is conveniently located. Excuse me. The hood of Rockville Center is these tiny projects that they placed literally on the border of Rockville Center and then the next black town over where I grew up at, Lakeview. So, um, just some quick context there, right? This shit I'm touching on is part of my larger Sundown Town series or whatever have you. And in that series, I kind of just break down different states and the sundown towns that are in those states. So people at a high level, like you, Nat, from your life experience, when I say the word sundown town, what image come to your mind? Okay, you ain't got to answer, but I know you're listening. But you probably envisioning people with robes and motherfuckers burning crosses and black people running scared, oh no, or being turned away, or you might be envisioning any movie where the person is coming into town and then the racist cops roll up on them. What are you doing, boy? We don't like your kind around these parts. That's still all southern imagery type shit. There's a great movie actually, by the way, called Rebel Ridge, starring Aaron Pierre, light skinned brother from Britain, who's also about to play Green Lantern. But this brother, he's going to this country town to try to bail his family out of jail. The cops give him a hard time, yada, yada, yada. You know the rest. This was a fucking sundown town. But the model and the way sundown towns operate are totally different in the South than how they operate in the West, than how they operate in the Northwest, than how they operated in the, deep South Mississippi region. Totally different from how they operated in the Midwest of Ohio, Illinois, or Michigan, and totally different than how them shits operated in the Northeast. And New York had its own special brand, which, check out my full length shit when it drop later on this month. But right now I'm just spoon feeding y'all piece by piece. Um, but today we're gonna touch on Malvern. So all my people who grew up and lived in Lakeview, pardon me, most of us went to Malvern High School. Lakeview was a small, black village in the town of Rockville Center in the county of Nassau. Everybody who lived there went to Malvern High School unless your parents had extra bread to send you to a Catholic or some kind of prep school situation. Um, but on my personal history, I attended, Davidson Avenue. Then from Davidson Avenue, I hit Howard T. Herber Middle School, which I need to look up his ass because there might be some shit there. And then, of course, left there, moved in seventh, no, between the summer of sixth and seventh grade, I moved from Lakeview in Nassau County to Amityville in Suffolk County. And then, chilled out there from seventh to ninth grade, and then by 10th grade, I moved back to Malvern. So that covers my Long Island experiences, sort of in a nutshell, at a high level, right? But in the midst of all of that, um, of working on this Sundown Town series, there were plenty of people in my comments that would be like, yo, not all sundown towns are in the South. And I'm like, cool, I understand that, but I'm really just kind of, getting started with it. And I want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Rena Freeze, this sister on YouTube. Her Sundown Town content is like chef kiss A1. My shit. I do what I do, but I always want to take the time to big up somebody who I think is doing some shit on a whole other level, whole other angle and aspect of what I'm covering. So shout out to her. Everybody who happened to watch this, check her out and her content. But anyway, the place that I grew up in, the school district that I attended, was low key a fucking sundown town in Long Island. And then doing the history on New York sundown towns, I came to realize that New York was just as racist, probably more racist than niggas in Mississippi, Alabama, and all that type of shit. Louisiana, Texas, the ones that we have been programmed via television and movies to see them as the racist and up north as we good up here. Nigga, you was never good up there. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and we hitting Pennsylvania next. But anyway, in the midst of covering Long Island, I seen a name pop out, and then that name connected to Malvern, and then I was like, oh shit, hold up, yo, what the fuck? So let me crack this Heineken, and then let's get this shit popped off. All right, so the long and short, more than 50 years ago, a small Long Island community became ground zero for a northern civil rights battle. In Malvern, New York, the man who built the town was also the great titan of the New York State Ku Klux Klan. When the state ordered Malvern schools to integrate, families, students, and activists faced a war over classrooms, lawns, and the meaning of neighborhood. This is the story of how legal victory collided with white resistance and why the kids carried more than backpacks. So that's what we have to get into for the first portion of this live. So the foundation, Paul W.F. Linder, and Sundown Town, um, Malvern, wasn't just another suburb. This real estate developer was president of the Homeland Corporation, which built much of that community. He was also, yeah, the great titan of the New York State Ku Klux Klan, which I just mentioned. And because of his role in the development from a real estate standpoint, both a street and an elementary school were named after him. And I got, friends that went to this motherfucking elementary school named after him, which is crazy. I went to another one in the district. But anyway, historian Alan Singer calls this the most explicit developer clan connection in New York. That history set the stage for what happens next. So before I even, go into the rest of the story or the script, so to speak, when people talk about systemic racism, institutional racism, this is this story will kind of give you a fleshed out, realistic example of institutional racism. We know that police, a lot of Klan were in the police. We know that based off of investigations conducted by W. Bush, not the daddy Bush, but the son Bush, the one who took niggas into Afghanistan, Iraq war. He led a private investigation into nationwide law enforcement because he understood that um, law enforcement nationwide was infiltrated by Klan and other white nationalist groups. Obama, who came in after him, also led an extensive investigation. So one president had Department of Homeland Security conduct an investigation, and then the other one had FBI do the same investigation. You don't have two presidents doing this type of investigation if they thought it was some bullshit to be taken lightly. So when you pair that with all of these black people that are coming up fucking missing, when you pair that with potential organ harvesting, when you pair that with sundown towns, which is the heart of this particular subject tonight, you have some shit that instead of sounding like three or four random things, it starts to synchronize and start to make sense. You have racist whites embedded into law enforcement, racist whites embedded into the real estate sector. You have racist whites embedded into the justice or the legal sector, education sector, finance, etc., etc. But we're gonna touch on all that shit. All right, so moving on back to the script and to the story. So this guy who built most of this community was a high-ranking Klan member, and by after World War II, redlining and restrictive practices consigned black families largely to the neighborhood of Lakeview, where I grew up in. Even though I was born in Rockville Center, I grew up in Lakeview. So as of today, they say Lakeview remains about 85% African American. Um, when I grew up, that shit was probably like 95% black. But that's still cool that they at least holding it down. It says Malvern's district served three elementary schools, Lindner Place in Malvern, Davidson Avenue in Lynbrook, which that's where I went in elementary. I didn't know I went all the way to fucking Lynbrook. I thought that was Malvern. Okay. And Woodfield Road, which is a third school that yeah. So when I was in Lakeview, I lived in three different parts of Lakeview. Right. I lived originally on Henry Street, which is the street that literally feeds into the parking lot of Malvern High School. The second place I lived in Lakeview was on Edgewood, which is like deep on the Tanglewood side of Lakeview. Also in the cut, which kind of takes you back on the back side of Lakeview down into Rockville Center once you go down the hill. Um, and then the third location I lived in Lakeview was on Woodfield Road. So literally 2 blocks up, if I walk from the house that I lived in at the time, which with my grandmother, you would run into Woodfield Road School, which was pretty much abandoned the entire time that I was living there. But apparently it was up and running in the past. But anyway, in the early 60s, Woodfield Road School was 75% black and 25% white, while Linda Place and Davidson Avenue were 14% black and 86% white. So that sort of made sense, at least for that time period. And then that school I mentioned, Woodfield Road, in my lifetime of being able to consciously know and remember shit, I never knew Woodfield Road School to be open. That shit was always abandoned whenever I walked past it, even though it sat directly across from the, Lakeview Park. So anyway, in 1963, the campaign begins. So African American families in Malvern launched a campaign to integrate the village's schools. They lobbied New York State Education Commissioner James E. Allen Jr. to desegregate the district. And starting in September of 1963, pro integration families, well, actually, I don't know if they not pro, you know, wrong notes, forgive me. They not pro integration if they boycotting or they were against integration. But these motherfuckers boycotted Malvern public schools to the point that they created temporary freedom schools in churches and community centers, and including the Jewish Center, which is crazy. So to keep it right there, when people talk about black people and our so-called allies, and when people black people talk about the great this so-called great mystical relationship that blacks and Jewish community allegedly have, no, that motherfucker was never great. But I could go and give you 1,000 reasons why. But this particular instance right here is a crystal clear example. So Anglo-Saxon whites at that time was still referred to kind of as WASPs. Yeah, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. They did not want to fuck with us, which is why there was the segregation. They also segregated against Jews. And because they segregated against Jews as well, but Jews still kind of had a slight white privilege. The Jews just brought their own little um, situations and created their own little enclaves within the housing market or the newly formed suburbs that were being built out at this time of the 50s and 60s. So the Jewish community were also starting to box motherfuckers out too. So let's never forget, because that's what they love to say. Never forget that, like just like these Anglo-Saxon Protestants, the Jewish community in Long Island created whole fucking neighborhoods and literally low key took over entire villages to where they became predominantly Jewish um, villages that also had the same racial and restrictive housing clauses and covenants that prevented blacks specifically and Latinos, and to a larger degree, or a lesser degree, I should say, Asians from coming in. And that's how you still have a lot of villages in Long Island that are predominantly Jewish, a lot of them that are predominantly Italian or predominantly, WASP, however you want to do it, Anglo. The villages that were predominantly black in Long Island where they stayed predominantly black for the most part due to black people from the city, from Queens, Manhattan, wherever else that wanted to slice of American pie, that wanted to have a home and raise their kids in a nice suburb and go to a better quality school in Long Island. The white people told them, and the other people told them, you can't live here, but you can go over there. And that's why, like, yeah, Roosevelt's, yeah, Amityville's, your lake views and other little black pockets, throughout Long Island existed. They were what's the opposite of gentrification? They were black drop off points. You can't come here, but you could go there, there, or there. The designated nigga spots. You know what I mean? That's me being eloquent after like 4 beers. So, fuck it. It is what it is. All right. Anyway, so I just had to kind of go on that little tangent just to highlight this alleged allyship. These motherfuckers, you may have had some Jewish people that went on freedom rides and, stood on the front lines with Martin Luther King and them during the protests and all that. But on a larger scale, they still got their own entire areas. And this shit, if you go to Crown Heights in Brooklyn and other little sections, they have their whole areas where They trying to lock that shit down, and it's been locked down for decades. All right. Anyway, so to go further back on script now, white parents, and we still in the year 1963. White parents opposed to integration formed the Taxpayers and Parents Association to preserve neighborhood schools. They secured support from the state senator Norman Lent, who introduced two bills in the state legislature outlawing the busing of students to achieve racial balance and the assignment of pupils based on race, color, religion, or national origin. The bills failed. Now, at this time in 1963, I know my mom's person, she was born in 58, and she was like one of the youngest. My other siblings was born a little bit before that, so they were literally the part of that first batch of kids to be integrated. Off top, the timeline is telling me this, and this is shit that I never even um, thought to talk about with my mom, because from my perspective of being a kid born in the 70s, late 70s, I thought that shit was always sweet and integrated, just like our kids in 2026 might think shit is sweet, and they can just go willy-nilly here and there and all that, not knowing that where they live might be a sundown town. Still, fuck the past, it still might be a sundown town. But anyway, so we're gonna move along. So by 1964, 1965, you had courts, you have lawsuits, the Supreme Court kind of trying to get involved. It says through the Malvern Taxpayers and Parents Association, white parents sued to overturn the desegregation order. The state Supreme Court overturned it in 1964, but the state the state Court of Appeals upheld the original ruling. So once again, all this kumbaya shit, these is fake white liberals will try to make it seem like they've been all about the integration and the love, and we care about y'all and da da da. These motherfuckers said no, we don't want no niggas in Malvern. Even though the government said you gotta integrate, they filed the lawsuit and won, which said we ain't gotta take these niggas. But then in a state court of appeals, they said no, 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 you've got to go with integration. So in 1965, the case reached the U.S. Supreme Court, which sided with desegregating the Malvern district. And when initial efforts were made to reassign students to racially integrated elementary schools in 1965, a large group of white families boycotted the district schools and set up their own independent classes for their children. Boy, they said we pulling our fucking babies up out of there. If there's gonna be a nigga in my fucking baby's classroom, I don't my child is not gonna be at the school. This is the reality that all y'all niggas need to understand. 1963 ain't no ancient history, nigga. And for the devils who try to come in the comments, your grandmother, who's probably still alive, was born around this time. All right, anyway. So now we are 1966. And around 1966, there was something called the Princeton Plan. In 1966, the Commissioner Allen, he made Malvern the first district in New York State to receive a desegregation order. I never knew that. The state mandated the Princeton Plan, Students would no longer attend local elementary schools. Instead, the district integrated by assigning students based on grades rather than neighborhoods. So, K through third grade, you went to Linden Place or Davidson Avenue. Pardon me. Fourth and fifth grade, you went to Woodfield Road, which of course is in the 85%, or at that time probably 99%, 100% black neighborhood. It was implemented in 1966, and this caused intense tension. So it's bad enough that the white parents didn't want black kids coming into their school district. I know they was losing their shit. Wait a minute, you saying I gotta send my white kid to Lakeview to Woodfield Road, I school out there with the niggas? Oh hell no. Cause that's what the fuck it was. You know what I'm saying? And this is no disrespect to the white people that I grew up with and might have been friends with in, Malvern, whatever. You know what I'm saying? This ain't nothing against you. This is just the history that I'm giving here. You know what I'm saying? You all y'all, black, white, Latino, Asian, all y'all niggas gotta understand of where we went to school at. And everybody else who watching who live and grew up in Long Island and still live in Long Island of any age group. All right, so they was mad that their kids were being sent to the nigger school, Woodfield Road, for fourth and fifth grade. For a 9-year-old Fred Brewington, young brother from Lakeview, Integration Day meant that leaving his home in Lakeview and walking through the woods, mostly to White Linden Place Elementary, which, so just to stop right quick to kind of give somewhat of a visual, it's been forever since I lived in Long Island, New York, all that shit. I'm ATL at this point, but I do remember, you're gonna have to probably do cut down through Pine Brook, or if you was on the not the Tanglewood side, you definitely cut through some woods probably in this era. And if you was just even on off of Lakeview Ave or off of goddamn Peninsula, you still cutting through the main school. You might have to cut through some woods, which is still gonna kind of be sort of a shortcut diagonal to get over to where Linden Place is gonna be. So yeah, all right. He was walking through the woods. Reporters swarmed this young brother, this young kid at the time. What did your mother tell you? They asked. And then he responded, walk straight to school and don't step on anyone's lawn because they don't want you over there anyway, which was a fact. This wasn't a theory, this was a motherfucking fact. So protests were vehement. White parents were shouting, we don't want you here. And that's crazy. That's crazy and fucking wild. You got these vicious white devils, which they are, because if you an adult and you yelling at a young elementary school kid who's 9, so we don't want you here, nigga, you're fucking out of pocket. You're a devil. That's all I got for you. Um, and if this is your mother, your grandmother, well, most likely your grandmother or your great grandmother who was one of these people shouting, they're devils. Um, we don't want you here. Go home. So young Brewington later said that kids in the classroom did not share their parents' viewpoints, and this goes back to the reality that racism in America is taught. When you put kids together, naturally they're gonna just be doing kid shit. They ain't thinking about all this politic and all that shit. They're gonna say the hateful shit because they hear their parents at the crib saying the hateful shit. So anyway, young Brewington, he basically said that the kids that he ended up going to school with, the white kids, they were cool for the most part. Um, he was elected class president from eighth grade throughout his senior year. He was that dude, clearly. You know what I'm saying? Um, and then here's a little highlight. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. visited Long Island during this period and met young Fred Brewington. And maybe it was that meeting of, the young brother meeting Martin Luther King that inspired him to become a civil rights attorney later on down the line himself. So shout out to Fred Brewington. Hopefully he's still here with us. If he's not, I'll try to, throw something, in the comments or something like that. But hopefully he's still, here with us. He should be roughly by this time in 1966. He should be about my mom's age by a year or so off. But anyway, he had that moment with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King actually came out there to Long Island, to Malvern, to Lakeview. You get what I'm saying? So this is shit that, as a motherfucker growing up in Lakeview, I never learned all of this shit. This is some heavy info. You know what I mean? You know, it's deep. It's light, but it's deep at the same time. This is some shit that might have shaped some of the young niggas in the '90s who was so focused on trying to be fake thugs, even though they had two parents with good jobs. You know what I mean? Wanting to live some fucked up lifestyle that statistically they shouldn't been living compared to our peers who come from Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, da 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 da, you know what I mean, who didn't have the advantages and privileges that niggas had in Long Island. That's my little sidebar. You know what I'm saying? That's some inspirational shit. But anyway, we now are at 1967 through 1978. So, White Flight and Freedom Schools. Woodfield Road School closed in 1967. So basically, 1 year after them white kids were forced to go to this black school, basically for all intents and purposes, because it's on Woodfield Road in Lakeview. They were like, nah, nigga, uh-uh. Local parents would not approve busing for those students to the other two elementary schools in white neighborhoods, leaving many children to walk up to 2 miles to school. Now, I remember walking to Davidson Avenue, shit, from Henry Street. Yeah, yeah, from Henry Street. I think I was still, and I might have had to walk to that motherfucker one time when we lived on Edgewood, over basically in Tanglewood. You know what I'm saying? You missed the bus, nigga. You gotta walk. But anyway, this issue wasn't resolved until 1978. So for 11 years after they deaded the whole bus situation, the kids in Lakeview, which is many of our parents, or yeah, probably your parents at this point, if you in my age group of 49, 50, whatever, they had to walk to school, to elementary school. And if you went to Davidson Avenue, that was a slightly, well, I feel that Davidson Avenue was a slightly longer walk than walking to Linden Place. Now, for the brothers that lived on the other side, as we call it, Pine Brook and that shit over there, walking to Linden Place might have been, it might have been, way quicker. Or it could have been equivalent, I'm not sure. But I'm thinking if he was on the other side, that walk was faster to get to Linden Place as opposed to niggas on our side, the Tanglewood side, having to walk to Davidson Avenue. So anyway, by 1978, the state finally mandated that kids from Lakeview can be bused into Malvern schools in a proper manner. So, as a compromise, August 1967, the Malvern School Board and the State Education Department agreed on the new 444 plan which had two, kindergarten through fourth grade schools, then district wide middle school and high school. But this plan was doomed from the start because you had intense white opposition. Pardon me. This, like I said, this is a motherfucking sundown town. They did not want niggas there. They didn't want to integrate with niggas. They told you in 1963 that they didn't want no niggas integrating over there. And they telling you again still by 1967, 68. So the parents, the white parents, are still fighting this shit tooth and nail. It got to the point where many white parents, the ones who didn't pull out their kids from them schools earlier, more by this point pulled their kids out of the local schools and enrolled them in private schools. And that's why I think low key, which I'm gonna definitely do a whole series on that shit. These charter, these prep schools, the Catholic schools, whatever schools, these were the loophole for these devils to stay segregated because they did not want their children to be around black kids. It's just that simple. So it says that today, even today, a quarter of the district students still attend private schools. So some white families created these freedom schools, which I mentioned earlier. This weakened the public school desegregation effort. The all white board, so we're dealing with educational arm of the systemic racism. We already mentioned the Linden guy who was a real estate, mogul, basically powerhouse type nigga who represents the real estate arm of institutional racism. Now we touched on the educational part of it, right? So the all white board strongly resisted integration and filed a lawsuit against the executive order to desegregate. So they're trying to sue again. They tried to sue New York State again for forcing them, because of course white people always gotta play the victim, even though they've been doing devilish shit their whole time. Why do we gotta integrate? You know what I'm saying? Why can't Lynbrook or why can't fucking Baldwin or some other state village choose? Why the fuck it gotta be us? Why we gotta fuck with these niggas? That's the energy. You know what I mean? That's what the documentation, that's what the historical documentation is telling me. I'm putting a source on it, but that's what I'm supposed to do, nigga. This is YouTube. Fuck out of here. Eat a dick. All right. So to go further, they were the only one, maybe two black teachers in Malvern High School, and there were zero black administrators. The guidance was terrible when it came to black kids, said Robin Delaney. The expectations were so low. So now let's go on ahead. We're gonna jump to the next little part of this. So I told you the white families and parents did not want their kids with us. They yanked their kids out of the schools by creating so-called freedom schools. The irony of that, colonizers creating freedom schools. These white families, Catholic, Jewish, they created Catholic, Jewish, and prep schools. That's what the fuck they did. So our so-called allies created all of these different schools to get the fuck away from the niggas that they allegedly are allies of. This is for you um niggas who lost in the source that need to wake up. The historical record and reporting confirms that white flight from Malvern public schools went largely to these private and parochial schools. While specific enrollment lists from the 1960s, Malvern families aren't public, these are the major Catholic, Jewish, and prep schools in the Nassau County slash Southern Long Island region that were operating during and after the 1960s desegregation battles. Battles. They were fighting hard to not get let us in. Should we have, you know, fought ourselves not to be integrated? That's a different topic altogether. But anyway, so out of some of the Catholic schools, you have Kellenberg, which any nigga from Lakeview probably done at one point in their life fuck with a little shorty from Kellenberg at one point or another. Kellenberg Memorial High School, Uniondale, New York, established in 1987. Yada yada, mostly white, 73%, at least at the time of whatever last poll was taken on that. Then you had Sacred Heart Academy in Hempstead, a Roman Catholic school, all girls situation. Then you have Xaverian High School in Brooklyn. I know, right? They going drastic with it. They the school was in Brooklyn, but it drew Long Island students because these white people were that fucking set on not having their kids be in a school with a black kid. So they decided to wake up extra fucking early to drive their kids to fucking Brooklyn, nigga. Think about that shit. And it's not like Brooklyn is some long ass trek from Long Island, but if you in Nassau County, which is in Lakeview already, which is kind of close to Queens, probably about a little 30-minute drive if there's traffic, 40 minutes, but really like a 30-minute drive or some shit like that. But this is the extent they went to get their kids in an all white situation quickly. This school was established in 1957, and the school is still mostly white to this day, even though they claim it's um, about 50%, 57% white, but it's still more white than other. Next up, you got Archbishop Malloy High School in Queens, Catholic school situation. You already know. Monsignor Farrell High School, Staten Island. Look, nigga don't even need to go any further. Staten Island. And then it says some families in Long Island went as far as to take their kids out to Staten Island for school. Now that's a little journey to be going from Long Island. You taking your kid all the way to fucking Staten Island for school? You really didn't want your kid to be around no black kids. That's crazy. This school was established in 1961. So it's funny that a lot of these schools were kind of being established around the time frame of the civil rights era, because technically the civil rights era really kind of kicked up around the early to mid 50s. Um, but anyway, now we're going to touch on some of the Jewish schools. You have the Torah Academy for Girls. This was established in 1963, conveniently at the same time that New York State was trying to implement the desegregation. Put that shit together. Get y'all mind right. To this day, it's still mostly white. Associated Beth Rivka schools. You already know what it is. Yeshiva of Spring Valley. This school was established in 1942. You know what I mean? Uh, you already know what it is. Now, this school right here being established in 1942, This one was established probably due to, of course, at the time, they still were being boxed out of white world or Anglo-Saxon world, so they definitely had to create their own little education situation in that particular instance. But that 1963 one is definitely sketchy. That one looked like, oh, they was part of the same. Oh no, we definitely gotta, we ain't integrating. Then of course you got Yeshivat Darshay Erez Boys High School, same situation. So now the last couple of schools I'm going to touch on are non-sectarian slash prep schools. So you got Ethical Culture Fieldston School. This was established in 1895. Still mostly white. Poly Prep Country Day School in Brooklyn, established 1854. You already know. St. Anne's School, Brooklyn, established 1965. Packer Collegiate Institute, Rye Country Day School, established 1869. So these are these old Tom ass type joints. Stony Brook School, established 1922. All right, so basically, these schools represent the private parochial network that existed during the white flight from Long Island public schools from the 1960s to 70s. Newsday and Herald report and confirm many white parents pulled their children from local schools and enrolled them in private schools during Malvern's desegregation. So, why this government integration slash desegregation failed? Supporters saw the Princeton plan as a necessary step towards equal opportunity, but the backlash of the white families in Malvern exposed how deeply race and neighborhood identity were connected. Some historians argue not all resistance was driven explicitly by race. Many white parents feared losing their local school, which makes no sense. You can't lose it, nigga. It wasn't just school to begin with. It's the school of the community. Anyway, the outcome showed a painful truth that changing laws is easier than changing hearts. The article main argument, court ordered integration, pardon me, did not automatically create a genuinely integrated school system. Because in true integration, the black kids and the white kids would have been there. The parents would have been like, all right, cool. It is what it is. This is the new situation. There wouldn't have been mad niggas out there protesting. There wouldn't be fucking adults yelling at a 9-year old black child about, we don't want you here. What the fuck? So yeah, like clearly that motherfucker failed. Um, Segregation patterns largely persisted because many of these families just said, fuck it, nigga, we'll put our kid in another school system. And that's what they did. And that's what kept this district of Malvern racially imbalanced. And then the lasting impacts, like even after integration was implemented, due to the white families withdrawing into private or parochial schools, that undercut the balance that the plan was meant to create. Brewington, the young brother who I told you was met by Martin Luther King Jr. when he visited Lakeview and Malvern. Brewington later said that the process did create opportunity, but it did not fully transform attitudes in Malvern on Long Island or in America as a whole. The tension between progress and resistance is what makes the story relevant to this day. Malvern was a test case after racial imbalance and overcrowding in one elementary school exposed the limits of separate but equal in suburban New York. The state pushed reorganization, but white parents fought it through protests and multiple lawsuits before it took effect in 1966. So the children of Malvern were asked to carry more than backpacks. They carried the weight of a nation struggling to live up to its own ideals of, freedom, equality, and justice for all, all that good shit, yada, yada, blah, blah. The journey reminds us that the civil rights history was not only made in marches and speeches, but it was also in school hallways, on neighborhood streets, and in the courage of young students' hearts. So Malvern proved that even though a state can issue a desegregation order to a village or a town, it's not the same as building an integrated community. Because if that village or town that the state has given this order to, if they fight it tooth and nail, is it really integration? No. And that's what happened in Malvern. So by the time of my lifetime being, from 80 something, probably 81 or whatever the fuck it was when the nigga touched down in Malvern and Davidson Avenue, from my lifetime view, shit was still segregated when I look back on it. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, we still was in Lakeview doing our thing over here. The white kids was doing their thing over there, even though I was like one of the, one oddball type little niggas that would go, visit my friends in Malvern. But I ain't seen no other nigga out there on that side of Ocean Avenue. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, yeah, it was motherfucking segregated. Even from my fucking experiences looking back, elementary through fifth grade. All right, so that concludes that portion of the live. So I'm glad y'all fucked with me on that. My people in the Discord, if y'all want to just talk about whatever else y'all want to talk about, some sports, some celebrity type bullshit, y'all can do that. Chime on in or whatever the fuck. Holla at me. And if not, then I'll go into a whole other joint because I got shit, files upon files of shit I need to record and touch on anyway. So it don't matter. Okay, what the hell we got here? Oh yeah, IRS. So this, I don't even know if Knight Rider or he on here listening, but I'm gonna go into this IRS tax deduction shit and the debt program shit too. So we're just gonna keep this shit flowing. So for those out there, I know April 15th just passed. I know we got some people that may have been like, oh man, I forgot to file my taxes April 15th. You could still file your shit next year. You know what I'm saying? You have to know you're going to be behind on taxes for 1 year, but at least coming into 2027, here's some things that you can implement for the remainder of this year because we still got, what, 7 more months to make sure that you don't take as big of a hit for next year. So we're just gonna kind of run through a complete business tax deduction guide here. Of course, as always, do your own due diligence. I'm trying to give you just the high level shit. Um, Consult with your local qualified tax consultant who can confirm what I'm saying or even give you further detail on what I'm saying. So, anyway, business operating expenses. If you have a business, these are your day to day costs of running a business that you can use for deductions. Rent or lease on an office, studio, warehouse, or retail space. Now, the details, like I said, when you consult with your tax person, it's going to probably be either 100% of the space, or if you're using your home, a percentage of your apartment or home square feet space that will be, factored into the deduction. Utilities, same thing. This is going to apply to if it's like an actual business storefront, a brick and mortar, as they say, that you are paying for as well, then that's gonna be 100% of everything. If you running the shit out your house, percentage. So I'm not even gonna say anymore. So basically, just think if you got a storefront, probably 100% home is gonna be a percentage. Consult with your tax and so anyway, same thing. These business operating expenses, you'll be able to apply this to office supplies, pens, paper, printer, ink, folders, stuff that you need in the day to day use or operation of your business. Printing and copying costs. You know what I mean? If you got to mail out shit, postage and shipping costs. The business license, the licenses, the permits, possible business certifications, whatever from that standpoint, the administrative side of the business that you need to even start your business, that can even be deducted to a degree. But subscriptions, if you are a social media creator, content creator, and you have to subscribe to Adobe, to get the full suite where you can do all of the cool effects and all that good shit, that's a business expense. If you're paying for, the full, I don't know, not Canva. Well, yeah, Canva does put a charge on you because you can use it for free. But if you're subscribing to the full pro version of Canva, as an example, or CapCut or any of these shits, those are business expenses. Um, Same thing goes. The subscription thing also applies to other software tools or even publications, newsletters that you may pay to receive industry specific information. So now home office deductions. If you work from home and have a dedicated workspace, going back to that percentage of the house, you can deduct a percentage of rent and mortgage interest, a percentage of utilities, a percentage of your home insurance, a percentage of your internet bill. Then, pardon me. So the IRS uses two methods. The simplified method is $5 per square foot, up to 300 square feet, but $1,500 max. Regular method, actual expenses times percentage of the home used for business. All right. Vehicle and transportation. So mileage, you can get up to 67 cents per mile, and this is per the 2024 IRS standard rate. Actual vehicle expenses, gas, oil changes, repairs, insurance, registration, parking fees and tolls, flights, trains, buses for business travel, rental cars for business trips, Uber, Lyft, taxis for business purposes. So, you must choose either mileage or actual expenses, but you can't use both. Technology and equipment. So, computers, laptops, tablets, stuff like that, phones. There's like a business use percentage for phones, cameras, microphones, lighting, which of course are important if it's relevant to your media brand. Hard drives, storage devices, monitors, keyboards, accessories. All of this stuff can be deducted. That's what I'm getting at. Software licenses, like I touched on, an Adobe subscription or license, streaming equipment, caption cards, your microphone. You know, I was trying to wave to make it a show up off of the green screen, but it ain't appearing. Oh well. All right, so and these can be deducted in the full year of purchase via Section 179 or depreciated over time. So next you have marketing and advertising. So whatever you spend on ads for YouTube ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Google ads, graphic design fees. You know what I mean? If you want to have a t-shirt, printed up, my business, Joe Blow Plumbing, whatever, you know what I'm saying? You can deduct that. Logo and branding course, website design, domain names, website hosting, you know what I mean? SEO, search engine optimized tools and services. There's so many things that you can deduct in your taxes. That's what we're trying to get at here. So when you're sitting there wondering, like, well, how can I get these people out of my pocket? I'm trying to give you all of these potential ways that you can use. You can. It's not like you can use only stuff from section one or section two. You can combine all of these things to have a significant, effect. That's how these, corporations pay hardly nothing in taxes, even though they make billions of dollars. So moving on, even though we're still dealing with marketing and advertising, social media management tools, promotional materials, business cards, flyers, merchandise samples that you may either hand out at some kind of convention or a pop-up situation, or if you're at a convention, you know what I mean? Any sponsorships that are related to your business, you can, you know, add that to the list. Now, going on to the content creation expenses specifically, you're going to have your video editing software, your stock footage and music licensing subscriptions, maybe Getty Images or something like that. Just to throw out a random, stock footage subscription you may have to pay for. Thumbnail design tools such as Canva Pro or Photoshop if you get the full entire suite. Script writing tools, research databases and subscriptions. You know what I mean? Like all of these things are things that they're expenses that you might already be paying for that you didn't realize you can write off a significant, portion of in your taxes. And this even covers, you know, educational materials, costumes, props or set decoration, location fees. If you had to, if you had to fly to, I don't know, Dubai to do a video on Dubai, you can pretty much write off percentages of that whole little situation because your purpose of going there was to do content on Dubai. Put this shit together. All right. Of course, you have your freelancer course. This means if you had to hire editors, writers, designers, or researchers, then of course you have your professional services such as the accountant, who I keep telling you guys consult with an actual tax professional who will confirm all of this shit. Whatever they charge you, you can even write off a percentage of those fees. Legal or attorney fees, business consulting fees, financial advisor fees if business related, bookkeeping services. Now, moving on to employees and contractors, you have, of course, wages and salaries that you have to pay out to your employees, or your 1099 contractor payments, payroll taxes, employee benefits that you may have to pay out. All of these things you can still get deductions on. Workers' compensation insurance. Moving on to education and training. This is deductible if it maintains or improves skills in your current business. So, online courses, workshops, and seminars. So, if you had to go to Miami, you work in culinary arts, and you went to a seminar down in Miami to learn how to cook Cuban specific cuisine. This is a write off. You get what I'm saying, or a deduction to a degree or a percentage. Coaching or mentorship programs, as we touched on, books and publications, certifications, conference attendance fees. All right. And moving on to travel, airfare, hotel stays, 50% of meals while traveling for business, conference or event registration, tips and incidentals while traveling, baggage fees, must have clear business purposes, stated, personal trips with a side meeting doesn't fully qualify. Meals and entertainment, 50% of business meals are deductible. The meal must have a business purpose, a meeting with a client, discussing a deal, etc. Entertainment, concerts, sporting events is generally not deductible since the 2018 tax reform. Mm, too bad. So you can't write off going to the game. Sorry, but I would still kind of double check and ask with your tax consultant with that anyway. You might still be able to loophole it. Insurance, you have your business liability insurance, you have professional liability insurance, property insurance for business equipment, health insurance premiums if self employed, and this is a separate above the line deduction. And now you even can include cyber liability insurance. So, for the financials part of this, you can even include business bank account fees. Well, we're covering financial part now. Merchant processing fees, specifically like if you're dealing with Stripe, PayPal, Square, stuff like that. Business loan interest, accounting software if you're using QuickBooks, FreshBooks, investment research tools. Mmm. Yeah, so boom, like a cheddar flow, unusual whales if you're kind of doing trading, something like that. Very interesting. Credit card annual fees, but this applies to business cards only. Retirement contributions. As a self employed business owner, you can deduct contributions to a SEP IRA up to 25% of net self employment income. Max is 69,000 as of 2024. A solo 401k up to 69,000 combined employee slash employer contributions, and a simple IRA. This is one of the most powerful deductions available to business owners. Health insurance. 100% of health, dental, and vision premiums are deductible the line reduces adjusted gross income directly. This includes coverage for your spouse and dependents. Self employment tax deduction. You pay 15.3% self employment tax as a sole proprietor or a single member LLC. The IRS lets you deduct 50% of that SE tax from your gross income automatically. Mmm, good to know. Depreciation or depreciation. Long term assets lose value over time. The IRS lets you deduct that loss. So, Section 179, you would deduct the full cost of equipment in year one. So, in year one, you can deduct up to 1.16 million as of 2024. Bonus depreciation, 60% first year deduction, phasing down from 100%. And then bad debt, if a client owes you money and doesn't pay, and you reported that income on an accrual basis, you may be able to deduct it as bad debt. Startup costs. If your business is relatively new, up to $5,000 in startup costs deductible in year one. Mmm. Mmm. I'm liking that. Remaining costs amortized over 15 years, covers market research, legal fees, branding, initial advertising. And then we're going to finally move on to the last one, which is QBI deduction. This is bonus, as a, no, it's a bonus thing here. It's not an expense, but it is huge. Qualified business income deduction allows pass through business owners, which are sole proprietors, LLCs, S Corps, to deduct up to 20% of net business income from their taxable income. This is not an expense, it's a structural tax benefit. Income limits do apply. So, key rules to remember, um, these deductions, they must be ordinary and necessary. Expense must be common and helpful for your business. And it must be documented. So keep receipts, invoices, and records. And then you have to remember to separate personal versus business. Mixed use items such as your phone or car require a percentage calculation. That's where that tax professional comes back in. So throughout this whole video, I've been sprinkling that, and I'm gonna book in that shit. I started it with it, we're gonna end it with it. Consult with your tax consultant to confirm and give additional information on everything that I just provided here at a high level. And with that said, I'm gonna holler at y'all. Remember, a qualified CPA works with self-employed content creators or media businesses. They will most likely help you find deductions specific to your situation that goes beyond this list. Given the dual brand structure that you're operating, the deductions available to you could be substantial. So, that's all I got on that. All right, like the Discord quiet tonight. And if y'all staying quiet, then I'm just gonna move on to my next little joint. Like I said, I got infinite ammo, goddammit. But I'm trying to give y'all room to come on in and just talk some regular bullshit if y'all want. In fact, hit this thing. Yeah. Fact that might have got rid. Oh no, I ain't get rid of them. I ain't get rid of their ass. They just goddamn left. Yo, that's crazy. Shorty in the Discord says she literally just passed the exit of Lakeview. That's crazy. I'll see you, Nat. All right. We're going, yeah, I might as well kill as many birds as I can. Fuck it, because I'm going to chop all this shit up into 8,000 fucking videos. Hmm. All right, boom. We about to jump into the next joint here, which is different IRS debt programs. So these programs are helpful for those who might be jammed up. You got a letter in the mail to like you owe 30 bands to the IRS, and you like, oh shit. Don't panic. Take a deep breath. Hop on YouTube. If you found me, I'm glad you found me. If you found somebody else, I'm glad you found them. And hopefully, whatever information they got, along with consulting some kind of tax professional or consultant, they can help you find remedy. So let's go and get into some of these different programs. So the below that I'm going to touch on are some programs that will allow you to settle or reduce what you owe. Number one, offer in compromise, known as OIC, the closest to a discounted settlement. This is the most well known program. It allows you to settle your tax debt for less than the full amount owed. If you can demonstrate that paying in full would create financial hardship. So there's three qualifying grounds: doubt as to collectability, you can't genuinely pay the full amount, doubt as to liability, which is you dispute that you actually owe the amount, and then effective tax administration, where you could technically pay, but it would cause exceptional hardship. Like, the 30 bands that they just mentioned. I got the 30 bands, I could pay you, but my family is going through a severe, heavy, medical crisis, and those funds need to be applied over there, or else a possible life could be lost. So we can't pay you because we're literally choosing between life and death. Even though I went full fledged to the most harsh extreme, but you feel hopefully the analogy I just made there. All right, how the IRS calculates your offer. They use a formula based on your reasonable collection potential, your net equity and assets, home, car accounts, plus your future income potential over 12 to 24 months. If your offer exceeds their RCP calculation, they'll likely accept it. There's going to be an application fee, which is usually about $200 to $205. This will be waived for low income applicants, but the reality, the IRS accepts roughly 30 to 40% of OIC applications. Many people hire tax resolution companies for this, but be cautious. There are many predatory firms in this space that charge thousands and deliver nothing, which is why I'm saying consult with a tax professional or consultant. But if they talking some crazy wild shit, consult with another motherfucker for free until they start talking some shit that makes sense. or just go straight to the IRS website to find this specific program, OIC, which is Offer in Compromise, and just fill out the application or whatever yourself for the low of $205 versus what a shady individual might try to charge you. You owe 30 bands, well shit, you give me 8 and I can make that go away for you. Sucker might, it might sound sweet to them. 8,000, here, make it go away. And then the IRS is on your ass next year because you ain't never paid them that bread because that person took the 8 bands, ain't never did anything. They ain't never said anything to the IRS. So I'm gonna pay the little 200 application fee and take my chance there. But that's option one. Option two. So the government love these acronyms. This acronym is CNC, currently not collectible status. If you cannot pay anything right now, the IRS can temporarily suspend collection activity. So this means no payments required during you having this status. Penalties and interest continue to accrue. IRS reviews your status periodically. If your financial situation improves, they'll restart collection. This isn't a discount, but it buys time and stops garnishments and levies. Number three, installment agreement, a payment plan. So it's not a discount, but in this situation, the IRS would let you make payments. So once again, if we owe that 30 bands, they might be like, well, yo, you know what I mean? Just start making payments of 500 a month over time or something like that, or pay us 1,000 every month out of it over the next 2.5 years or something like that, and we good. So you have variations of these installment plans. You have a guaranteed installment agreement if you owe under 10,000 with automatic approval. You have a streamlined installment agreement where if you owe under 50,000 and they give you up to 72 months, or you have a partial pay installment agreement, PPIA, another government acronym. They love these acronyms. Pay what you can monthly, and remaining balance may expire when the statute of limitations run out in 10 years. Okay. It sounds like some hood shit, but we'll fuck with it. The PPIA is particularly strategic. If the 10-year collection window closes before you finish paying, the remaining balance is legally gone. So hey, that might be something if you owe big bread as well. Because some of these, especially these white folks and celebrities in general, that be having tax problems. Which I don't know why the fuck you would have a tax problem if you got any of that type of level of money. But what they say, everybody says that shit. But let me become a millionaire overnight. I fuck around and be hunted by the IRS. People be so caught up in having the bread and trying to live the good, flashy life, they forget all about common sense and the IRS. When niggas was working at Zaxby's for $12 an hour, they made sure that they filed their little H&R Block shit. But then that same nigga get, 10 million and pushing the Lambo. Now he don't know how to do taxes. Make that shit make sense. That's all I gotta say. All right. And this applies to everyone. All right. Penalty abatement is another option. The IRS can remove or reduce penalties, not the underlying tax, in certain situations. So the further breakdown is you have a first time penalty abatement, which is a FTA, another acronym I know. If you have a clean compliance history for the past 3 years, the IRS will often remove penalties automatically just by asking. That's some cool shit right there. Come on, look, man, I ain't been fucking up with y'all, man. I've been on point with my shit. Just I'm just saying, come on, man, just wipe that shit off my record, man. You know what I mean? Get rid of that shit. I ain't got time for this shit. We got you. Cool. Reasonable clause abatement is another situation. So illness, natural disaster, death in the family, bad tax advice, if you want to, throw a accountant under the bus, or other circumstances beyond your control that could come, keep that up your sleeve. The next little part of this penalty abatement you could do is possibly statutory exception, which is IRS error or incorrect written advice from the IRS itself. Penalties can be 20 to 25% of what you owe, so this alone can be significant. Now, that last one sounds shady because the IRS, I'm doubting that the government is really gonna admit that they made a mistake on your shit. When I done seen hella documentaries on the IRS running down on, I'm talking about these legitimate business owners confiscating their storefronts, taking thousands out of their whole, accounts, and then shit is found out by independent, researchers that the IRS was wrong, and then that legal business owner had to fucking take the IRS to court for many years to finally get the bread back. The IRS is very slow to admit when they fucking wrong with anything. And unless you got the financial resources to go toe to toe with their ass, I don't know about that one. But if you bread it up, number three is an option as well of the penalty abatement. Number five, statute of limitations, which is the overlooked factor. The IRS has a 10-year collection statute expiration date. Another government acronym, CSED, CSED. So from the date that the tax was assessed, after that date, the legal debt expires 10 years from then. All right, so basically, if you're close to the 10-year mark, a PPAIA can be used to run the clock out. Certain actions will pause the clock, which is what happens if you file bankruptcy or you submit an OIC, which was number one on the list, or if you live outside the US. Interesting for those expats slash passport bro type people. So while this isn't a program per se, but knowing your CSED is critical before making any payment decisions. So y'all might want to once again consult with your tax professional or consultant to get more information on those options. Number six, for those who are divorcing or getting divorced and got the IRS on your head, if your tax debt came from a joint return that you filed with your spouse or ex-spouse, and they are responsible for the error or underreporting, you may qualify to be fully released from that liability. So here's some situations here. Okay, you can't pay the full amount or you have limited assets. Pardon me, you could do a OIC, which is an offer in compromise. I ain't got the 30 racks that y'all want, but here I got 8. Bye. Temporary hardship, no ability to pay. You can file a CNC and be listed as currently not collectible. I ain't got it. I don't know when I'm going to get it. The next situation, I got some bread, but I can sprinkle that shit on you over time. Cause I ain't going broke for nobody. You know what I mean? If I got the 30 bands and they say what they need the 30 bands, you ain't getting the 30 bands, but you might get a band over time here and there sprinkled in. And that's pretty much what your installment agreement would sort of look like. It might not even be that heavy. It might be 500 a month, which is even better over time. Clean prior record, but penalties are large. So if you ain't never got in a bad situation before, but you got fucked up in the game, they hitting you for the same bread, the 30 G's. you might be able to ask them nicely and say, hey, I've been a good citizen and I ain't really, never fuck up before. Can you just overlook this shit one time for your boy? All right, cool, good looking. Apparently, that works once in a blue. Emphasis on once in a blue. And I don't know if it worked for black people. I'm sure rich whites, they definitely work for their ass. Say, come on, Johnson, you know my family. We've been here since the fucking Mayflower. The 2.8 million you say I owe you, I'm not paying it. Remove that shit from my record immediately. It'd be on that shit. Um, or if you just have some old ass debt, you want to check your CSED. So, if the IRS was on your ass back in 2016 of, I don't know, June, and you realize that, oh shit, I got this old ass tax debt. If I just waited out another month, I might be free of this whole situation. So also check for that. The joint return scenario, like we just touched on, or the spouse was the one making fucked up moves, innocent spouse relief, where you can possibly just throw them under the bus and move on with life. Like nigga, that 30,000, that was them. They was wilding. They was the ones doing the account. I don't know nothing about nothing. Go holler at them. And that will wrap up some of these IRS debt programs and possible loopholes to get you back breathing easy and stress free. So, important warnings before we close. Tax resolution companies advertised heavily around the OIC process. Many of them are scams. The IRS has a free tool called the OIC pre qualifier on irs.gov to check your eligibility before even paying anyone else. You can negotiate directly with the IRS yourself or use a CPA, tax attorney, or enrolled agent known as an EA, another acronym that the government got for your ass. EAs, enrolled agents, are IRS licensed specialists and are more often affordable than attorneys for this type of work. So that's just, something I want to leave y'all with. But yeah, hit that irs.gov just to at least see where you might stand. That's a solid first step in trying to get your game on track and not your way push back. So that will wrap that up. And for the two people that's checking me out, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for fucking with me. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, do whatever. And this is gonna be chopped up, like I said, into about 35 million different videos. Maybe yeah, I might wrap it up, I guess, because the rest of this shit is more faceless content video stuff that I'm gonna cover. All right, fuck it. I guess that's all I got for y'all tonight. I appreciate y'all showing love, and I will catch y'all on the next one.